Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, and this show is the 23rd segment in the series on the network of global corporate control. Today we're going to discuss the philosopher René Descartes, and he was the one who said, "I think, therefore I am." We're talking about how do we know what is real. It's important for us to look at these underpinnings of our reality because our reality is very different from what we think it is. And the reason why we've been so confused is because of a deliberate attempt by the network of global corporate control to manipulate our very ability to think. Did you know that only a handful of corporations, 6 to be exact, control over 90% of the media? That's General Electric, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. But these companies are actually really just one huge conglomerate because the directors on their boards are the directors on the boards of other companies that are interlocking. And this network is trying to control our thought process. Ever since Operation Mockingbird, which was a CIA-based initiative to control the media, what we see in the media is really brainwashing. There are many elaborate efforts to control and distort what we know. One method is called astroturf. That's where grassroots movements are really fake. They are paid for by the network of global corporate control. I pointed out a particularly dangerous astroturf group that's trying to control our return to the Constitution of the United States under Article 5. And this group is called the Convention of States. My efforts are actually group efforts, and I wanted to introduce later in the show one of the people who's been helping me. That's Betsy Banfield Malone. She was a friend of mine on Facebook, and she's been giving me information about a special group called the International Association of Near-Death Experiences. This coalition that I'm sitting in the center of, we're working together using the internet, and I started out as a lawyer in the World Bank legal department, and so I was very strategically placed, just by coincidence. But one of the characteristics that I have is that I'm very, very stubborn and I'm very, very curious. And things that were supposed to be working out, in particular, a very powerful political science modeling tool, it told me that the chances that we were going to break through this intense corruption were 90 to 95%. And that is absolutely correct. We have now broken through that corruption. And when I say we, I'm talking about 188 ministers of finance and development on the board of the World Bank and also the Board of Governors. The World Bank actually has 3 different tiers. One tier is a board of executive directors. There's 25 of them. 8 of them are representing the largest economies, and the rest are grouped in something called constituencies. That's one layer. And the second layer is 188 ministers of finance on the Board of Governors that meet annually and semi-annually. And I'm going to be going, actually, as you see this broadcast, I'm probably going to be in Peru because I'm taping this before my trip. The annual meetings are between the 9th and the 11th of October. And we'll find out whether the power transition model is correct. But one of the things that we need to focus on is who are the stakeholders in this push for honest money and breaking through this network of global corporate control. And I wanted to introduce Betsy Banfield Malone, who's one of the people who's been informing me about who the coalition is and who our stakeholders really are.
Betsy Banfield Malone, she's one of my friends on Facebook, and she's a blogger for Third Dog Script and a screenwriter and an all-around neat person, and I thought it would be very interesting to get her perspective, especially because she's also in contact with a group that it sounds very interesting. That's the International Association of Near-Death Studies. So what can you tell us that you think we ought to know about what's going on with the global currency reset, Betsy?
Well, first let me say good afternoon, and it's a pleasure to be with you and working with you. I can't say that I'm a official spokesperson for the group. However, I'd like to explain the importance of an awakened life, how we relate to each other through the collective unconscious. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the conference in San Antonio, Texas earlier this month, but just to give you an idea of what this is about, a near-death experience presents evidence of a greater reality and encourages us to come into alignment with our true nature and our purpose. This is stated by Susan Geisman, one of the people giving a workshop during the event. Records also have shown a New York Times best-selling author, Anita Moranja, was miraculously found cancer-free within 3 weeks of her near-death experience. In her workshop, she speaks about the lessons from her experience in the other realm. The powerful message for her: love yourself unconditionally, live fearlessly, release your fears, and be yourself. There's more to it than tooth and claw, gaining more possessions, or just surviving for that matter. The collective unconscious is profoundly affected by those individuals finding their purpose and who have a desire to make the world a better place. We are bombarded constantly by negative propaganda and ads and so on and so forth, and it's hard to raise your consciousness in everyday life. So these experiences that go out of the ordinary are really, really profound and powerful. For my own experience, the most profound, I know I've shared with you about as a child having a near-death experience, and in some of those episodes connecting with another area of life that most people don't connect with, and it truly does give you a sense of purpose, and you connect and align with certain movements and certain causes that you feel and can connect with on a higher level of consciousness, to know that that's the right thing that you're doing. And I'll go back to the out-of-body experience I had in 1999, which really made me connect with what's going on today with the global network of corporate control. I had a out-of-body experience where I was like seeing from the Washington Monument as Abraham Lincoln's perspective. And it was so intense and vivid, it just plagued me to, for a long time to figure out what that meant. And in 2010, I started to put the pieces together as I realized that there was a lot of things in our country's history that have been hidden and it's coming to light. And the opposition between these two monuments really stood out in my mind, and it took me back to that moment. And I felt the alignment very clear of why moving toward the truth and bringing out what has happened in our past, such as what happened with Abraham Lincoln and his battle with the, at that time, corporate control. So these things that are beyond our everyday life really do come into our everyday life, but you have to be aware of it, and that's where the sharing and understanding and having that awareness will take you to that higher consciousness where you can connect into a true purpose in moving all of us, humanity, forward into a greater realization of a perfect and better world to live in.
So what exactly had precipitated your near-death experience in 1999?
Well, it was an unlikely experience. I was on a boating trip, and the anchor of the boat was cut on a rock, and it, like a slingshot, just flew out of the water back into the back of my back and literally punctured a hole in my back and knocked me out. And after that experience, I had this what I call an out-of-body experience, which was into a higher realm. It was the weekend that uncanny that JFK Jr. had crashed and died. I remember it vividly. Because of that, that was a pretty intense weekend for me. I went to the VA Medical Center and they patched me up, and I was doing quite well after that. But during the experience, I had some visions and some intense experiences that, as I was saying, now really makes a lot of sense to me. And at that time, I knew nothing of our history, what goes on in the financial realm, any of that stuff. I was just so far removed from any of that, and didn't really start to embrace it until 2010. And that's when I started to connect the dots and say, whoa, this is really, something amazing here. That, I've had this experience, that obviously I was meant to learn more about it. And obviously I got involved with you to support you in your efforts, and had no doubt in my mind you are on the right track, you're moving toward the right things, and you're doing this for humanity. And I really get it on a deep level. Like, no one has to tell me. I just, it's just an internal knowing. And so that's my experience.
Well, a lot of people want to know who I'm working with. And so I thought it would be very good for people to know that you're one of the ones. And I try to learn from everybody who comes to me. I see myself as the switchboard. I'm there to try to work together with all of the people who want to have a better monetary system, because the way it's been set up, we've been under control. Do you want to talk a little bit about the network of global corporate control, the way you see them?
From my perspective, I've been learning, over the course of 4 or 5 years now. They have slowly but surely started to come out with a little bit of their information to make it, I guess, mainstream and okay now. And I find that very disturbing, that people are just accepting it. You see the pyramid, the images are very clear in our culture now, they're almost like saying, we're in control and you can't do anything about it. And it's such a psychological game for them. And I just hope that people understand this is not true. You need to wake up, become aware, and realize that that's the game they're playing. They've kept their little shenanigans secret for a long time, but now that we have the internet, we have connections, just as you are doing, with the switchboard. You're taking in all this information, and you're realizing how many people are aware. And they're not buying the spoon-fed craziness that we've had for such a long time. So I see them as becoming very scared and erratic right now. They're not knowing what to do as people gain more knowledge and understanding of their position. And I don't think we should have fear in this. We should just understand that they are nervous and they're acting out. It's like a child acting out. You're going to expect this from them. However, you don't give into it, So that's how I see them right now.
So we're actually the ones in control.
Yeah, we're actually in control. And it always appears the opposite when you look out into the world, into the what we call the public arena. It looks as if they have all the control, and they have none, really. It's them convincing us.
I think where we were was you were telling me about your 1999 experience. And for the viewers, this is our second try. I had to spend some money on getting the software to record this.
Okay, let's see. I was telling you about how uncanny a boating accident was back in 1999. I remember the date because when I had gone to the VA Medical Center to treat my wound after being stabbed by an anchor in the boat, everyone was talking about JFK dying, in the plane crash. And so that was a pretty intense experience. I was hit in the back, like I'm literally stabbed in the back with an anchor from the boat, kind of slingshot. It caught onto a rock and slingshot and barreled into me. And it was a near-death experience because I could have died, but I didn't. And I did have an outer-body experience that was unusual in the fact that it was like I was sitting in Abraham Lincoln's position looking at the Washington Monument, and it was just very intense and vivid. And I'm like, why would I have such a vision? And so I started putting the dots together in 2010 when I started to research and find out more about our country's history and why my Social Security number would be on the New York Stock Exchange. I found this out on the internet. I'm learning more, and I'm like, I was just overwhelmed by the new information, but also at the same time I couldn't stop reading everything that I could find on it. And this is when I learned of the network of global corporate control and what they had been up to for a long time, and how Abraham Lincoln was battling this same issue with the money, with preventing the hidden elite from controlling everything that we have going on in our country, taking our Constitution away, and so on and so forth. So the experience let me know that I was really in alignment with my purpose in connecting with you, for instance, and really pushing forward with getting the truth out and helping people understand what's gone on in our history and what needs to happen with our economic situation right now. I mean, we don't have time to play around anymore. We really need to change things. So that was that experience that I can really connect with. Why I even got on the bandwagon with you. I mean, you are. I knew for certain. Like there was. Just a real connection with you're bringing out the truth, you're moving humanity toward greater living and life for all of us, not just a few. It's for everyone. And I just really got on board at that time. And you, like you said, you are the switchboard that's taking in everyone's experience. Like you happen to be in the position that's gathering all the information, and you can start the wheels turning. And it is the people that is making this movement.
Well, this is our third attempt to have an interview, and one of the unrecorded attempts, you were talking a little bit about the fear factor. So maybe you could bring that up now, since this is the version that's going to go out.
Yes,
on the TV.
yes. Over the past several years, as I've started to learn about the network of global corporate control, I have noticed that they've gone from hiding their information to disclosing more information. And you can see in how they are responding to people waking up and being conscious of what's going on around them, that they're very nervous and they are fearful. They are wanting us to be in that position, but as people wake up, they are not accepting that. They are actually becoming more aware they have the control. The people have the control. It's not allowing the propaganda. We see the symbols in our television and radio, the pyramid and the little icons that they use to put out there and let us know, hey, we're in control. We're still taking care of everything. We're going to keep you in fear with the false flag attacks, so on and so forth. But it's not working as well because you can see that they are getting nervous, they are getting fearful, and I think they know that the game is over. I really do. I think they know the game is over, and the people are getting ready to take back their God-given rights. They just are. They're ready for it. And, we're at that tipping point.
Well, I think that's a good place to conclude. So thanks again, Betsy.
Well, thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
We'll be in touch.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
So thank you very much, Betsy. Now let's talk a little bit about what the nature of reality is. If a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody around to hear, does it make a sound? It's very apt that Oxford University Press has used this metaphor to introduce the concept of quantum physics and the nature of reality. We can rephrase the question as follows. How many people are required to acknowledge hidden corruption before the system is acknowledged as being corrupt? What if this corruption attempts to undermine our perceptions by buying up the City of London, the BBC, other media companies, and Oxford University to create a false sense of reality? Doesn't the corruption exist? Of course it does. But then we're faced with other questions, such as, if the corruption runs that deep, isn't it better to let sleeping dogs lie? What if it's clear that the dogs aren't sleeping anymore and that everyone is going to be punished this way? We then have a different set of pragmatic questions, which are not about what is real or reality, but rather whether there's any way to clean up the corruption. If it's clear that powerful individuals who knew about this hidden corruption established a concrete mechanism for the cleanup, the only question for us should be, when can we start? Moving from the rhetorical to the concrete, the hidden corruption is not so hidden anymore. When U.S. Congress and the United Kingdom and European parliaments disclosed this corruption on 5 separate occasions, a very powerful political science game theory model predicted with 90 to 95% likelihood that the corruption would end. If it's so likely that the corruption will end, and the concrete mechanism to end the corruption is in place, and we need to start right away, what is holding us up? And what's the concrete mechanism to end the corruption? And who were the powerful individuals who put this means to end the corruption into place? The paper currencies are the corruption that has to end, and the mechanism to end this corruption is the global debt facility and the Bretton Woods institutions, that's the World Bank and the IMF, that were established by Jose Rizal and his lawyer, Ferdinand Marcos. So where do we stand? In Holland, Herman Wijfels has been man enough to own up to the fact that the elite, not only in our country, but in others, have betrayed their duty to the people. Who is Herman Wijfels? He was a member of the board of executive directors who fired Paul Wolfowitz. And I happened to be in Holland because I studied development economics there and I speak Dutch. When I found out, Herman Wijfels disclosed in the newspaper that there was blackmail, that the members of the board of executive directors were being told that some of them had gone to the same madam that Eliot Spitzer had patronized. And they were being told that if they fired Paul Wolfowitz, this information would be made public. Some of the other executive directors had spent their money in ways that made them vulnerable to blackmail, and they were being told that if they fired Paul Wolfowitz, this would be disclosed. When I found out about this, I went straight back to the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, which was then chaired by Joe Biden, and I told Senator Dick Lugar about this, and I talked about this power transition model, and I said the United States was going to lose its leadership if we didn't stop trying to blackmail the representatives of the countries on the board of executive directors. That's how the members of the board got to know me, and I've stayed with them. In 2009, they appointed me as acting general counsel, and then I was locked out of the World Bank after that. And so I brought a lawsuit. I bought a World Bank bond, which meant that the World Bank was not immune. And the Board of Governors settled my lawsuit in 2011. And ever since then, I've simply been writing to all of these people. You can see the correspondence everywhere. And then in 2013, that's when I found out about the global debt facility. And then I realized that it was my job to work together with all of the countries of the world inside the World Bank, and if they weren't going to let me in, I was going to work with them outside the World Bank. And at a certain point, when I learned about some of the corruption, and that corruption has been coming more and more to light, I realized that this global currency reset is an opportunity for us to reset our, bring our first constitution back into effect, because it's been suspended in secret. The lawyers have been creating a false reality. The journalists have been creating a false reality. The auditors have been creating a false reality. And all of these professions, we're going to have to figure out how to do all of this work ourselves, because obviously these professions cannot be trusted. I've gotten in touch with all of them, and I said, if you want your profession to continue, you're going to speed up the currency reset, and they haven't done that. So it's very clear we are now going to have to replace them with something else, and it's not going to be something that can be done overnight. We're going to have to proceed with a lot of careful thought. And how do we learn how to think? How do we develop the critical capabilities when we have been taught how not to think? And that was something that I wanted to talk about, critical thinking. And one of the ways to do this, obviously, it's not something that's best done by yourself. It's best done with a group of people, and then you compare and contrast. I wanted to compare and contrast some of the disclosures that I've made versus the disclosures that others have made about the international monetary gold reserves. There's a fellow named Neil Keenan, and he's been talking about how the gold that belongs to all of humanity is actually, it belongs to China. When this gold went into hiding for 50 years, that meant that anybody who previously owned that gold lost their claim. And what does Neil Keenan have to say about that? Nothing. He has nothing further to say about that. So when you use compare and contrast, you can see that he's lying. He's just sitting there trying to confuse you for the CIA, which is who's been paying his salary. Some other things that you've been hearing, there's a fellow named Stevens who's been accusing me of just being another disinformation agent. But one of the differences is the fact that I have been sitting in the position that I've been sitting in, and that I've been reinstated. And you can say, well, maybe I haven't been reinstated, but you can see with these liens where I have stated the truth, and they have not, those statements have not been rebutted. And now the people who received this correspondence and didn't rebut this are in default and have liens on their personal assets. This is something, either it's true or it's false. Well, you can read the statements that I made in the commercial liens. You can see the correspondence that I used to back it up. This is truth. The notarial protest about where the international monetary gold reserves are, this is not something that any of the other people that are talking about the gold have to show. The documents that I've shown, these are not something that others have to show. I'm working to redeem the paper currencies with real gold currency. This is not something that some of the others that have been lying to you have to show. So if you have any questions about any of the documentation that I've put on the internet, I'm there to answer the questions. You can see on the YouTube channel a lot of questions that others have raised that I have responded to. And we're going to be working together going forward. The people who have pretended that they had rights to the gold have been contacting me. Why would they contact me? Some people have been threatening to throw me in jail if I didn't. I have the right to look at the interbank accounts, and they've been threatening to throw me in jail if I didn't do that for them. Obviously, I must have some authority, or they wouldn't think it was necessary to threaten me. Others have been trying to bribe me. I've published all of those bribes, including invitations to become one of their, I forget what they call themselves. I published that, and I published my response, which may not have been very polite, but that was my response. I'm not interested in joining those thieves. That's just not the way, that's not what makes me happy. I want to thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. We've been discussing how important it is to be open to learning from one another. The Network of Global Corporate Control no longer has a monopoly on our information. It now has to try to shape what we're thinking through fake whistleblowers or alternative media. And the trouble is, once people learn how to compare and contrast, they're getting harder to fool. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis. Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, and this show is the 28th segment in the series on the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today we're going to look at signs showing that the Network of Global Corporate Control has lost its ability to keep on printing paper currency and to use that paper to buy real things that are worth something. This picture shows very clearly what the problem is. And you see bars of gold. One is called India's gold, the other is called China's gold, and there's the dollar at the bottom saying, "Help, I can't get up." And I tweeted something saying that yes, the United States is going to get it up. And that is because we have gold too. Our monetary gold reserves are in the global debt facility, and I'm the lawyer for the global debt facility. That facility is at the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, and it is governed by the Board of Governors. That's 188 ministers of finance. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Jim Kim and Christine Lagarde and whether they're the ones that are in charge of the world's gold. Clearly, they're not. When you read the articles of the Bretton Woods institutions, it's very clear who decides what to do about the gold. And the problem is that Jim Kim and Christine Lagarde are runaway. They think that they're above the articles that govern, and that's because they're actually agents for the Network of Global Corporate Control. And for those who are just tuning in for the first time today, that is a conglomerate on the world's capital markets that owns 40% of the assets. And this conglomerate has been with us since the previous ice age. It's been hiding, but we are now exposing it, and we've been exposing it, and a number of people on the internet have been exposing it. There are also some people in the alternative media, but I would say at least 80% of what you're reading on those sites is just disinformation to confuse you. We've been talking for a long time about what you have to do to try to figure out what's really going on. And one of those things is to get involved in a group. And that's very important for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is that you need to be able to compare and contrast. But I think probably the most important reason is that people that are working together are not as vulnerable to the shenanigans of that network of global corporate control. We need to go back to the topic of gold. Let's talk about gold in the world of the gold traders. We've been on red alert since July 2013 when the price of gold for immediate delivery, called the spot price, was higher than the price of gold for future delivery. The technical word for this situation is gold backwardation. The last time this happened was in 1971, which was when the United States told the International Monetary Fund that it would no longer buy and sell gold in international transactions. The United States dollar is now losing its role as the international reserve currency, and gold is taking its place. There is an oversupply of Federal Reserve notes. Are Federal Reserve notes the same thing as United States dollars? John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan were shot when they said no. Many people now realize that the United States and rest of the world's monetary gold reserves are in the global debt facility. This is administered, as I mentioned, by the Ministers of Finance on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. The Federal Reserve and the United States Treasury Department are simply liars when they claim that they're holding the United States monetary gold reserves. The global debt facility has placed liens on the 12 Federal Reserve banks with the Secretaries of State under something called the Uniform Commercial Code. That's because the Fed owes the global debt facility over $2 trillion in Treaty of Versailles bonds. Those were issued in the 1930s, and interest is compounding daily. Why were those bonds issued? That's because Yamashita was going around offering these bonds to the elite at the time in exchange for their gold. He told them that war was coming and they were not going to be able to hold on to their gold, and also there was interest that was paid under those bonds. Now, it is a mystery how so many of those bonds ended up in the global debt facility, but the global debt facility has been known for its powers of persuasion, so I would think that a number of those bonds landed in the global debt facility because the families were not able to hold on to those bonds. When Jesse White, who's the Secretary of State in Illinois, removed the lien on the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, that's when the Fed moved to Chicago. So when that happened, 188 ministers of finance cleared a letter that I sent to them. I sent them this letter by registered mail, and you can see many people are asking me what their ministers of finance are doing. You can see the correspondence on all of this. And I met with a number of the countries at the concluded annual meetings of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. And I was speaking about that on the 27th of the last program that was live at DCTV. And I was able to post that interview, and then I sent it on to a conference that was being held in India with 40 African countries. And it's very important for people to recognize that none of this has been contradicted or rescinded by any of the countries. And the reason why they have been very careful not to contradict this is because all of this is based on an agreement that concluded World War II. That's the Bilateral Mines Field Breakthrough Successor Agreement. That's a mouthful, but what that says is that the gold that's in the monetary gold reserves is to be managed by the Board of Governors, and that the gold was going to be placed in hiding for 50 years. This is because at the end of 50 years, nobody could claim that that was their gold. That Bilateral Mines Field Breakthrough Successor Agreement also says that the courts have absolutely no jurisdiction and cannot decide what to do with the world's monetary gold reserves. When the International Court of Justice issued a proclamation saying that all of the paperwork of that trust was invalid, and the CIA 3 days later issued a statement, I just went to the Board of Governors and I cleared with them that we were rescinding that. And if we don't have a clear understanding about what happens to the world's monetary gold reserves, we are automatically in World War III. And that is why the countries are not contradicting this. And after I had sent this information to the Foreign Minister of India, that's Arun Jaitley, he's also the Minister of Defense, and he's also the Minister of their corporate ministry. And I also sent it to the Finance Minister of Malawi. And this then was forwarded by Twitter. I tweeted to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And the Joint Chiefs of Staff did not contradict this either. And then what they did, however, was they put an op-ed in the New York Times. John Spencer wrote an op-ed, and he said that it was really a mistake for the soldiers to be reading the social media, that they were losing their esprit de corps. So I then went and wrote a letter, which I posted on the internet, to John Spencer, calling him to task, saying that most Americans and the rest of the world realize that the New York Times and the mainstream media are nothing other than propaganda for the network of global corporate control, that the press is simply owned and controlled by the network of global corporate control. We've seen in the past couple of weeks how several reporters have just simply agreed with this characterization of the mainstream media, and most people no longer rely, and the surveys show that they don't really believe what they're hearing from the mainstream media either. So one of the things that I mentioned in my letter to John Spencer was this very, very accurate power transition model that comes from the Department of Defense. And this model is 90 to 95% accurate, and it predicts that there is a coalition for the rule of law. And this coalition consists of the BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and also the Group of 77, which is 134 developing countries. And it also consists of the United States minus the Federal Reserve. And that is because as people realize what is going on, and they realize that the Federal Reserve is just simply a bankrupt, it's bankrupt. We were talking about the Treaty of Versailles bonds worth $2 quadrillion. That's much more than country debt. When we pay our income taxes, we've already discussed, that money, first it goes to the City of London, and then some of it stays there, and then the rest of it goes to the Vatican. This is something that Ronald Reagan, in a task force that he appointed, it shows that this is what the actual situation is, and people are not willing to go along with this scam. It's just a scam. It's just a shakedown, and the world is ready to move on. It's very clear that that all of the countries that are managing the global debt facility are ready to have currency, which, first of all, the most important currency is the local currencies that are issued in the local jurisdictions, the villages, the cities, the towns, the counties, whichever group wants to have their businesses work together and exchange their goods for a local currency. That will create full employment, and we know how to do this. And there was just recently an article in the I believe that was, I can't recall which journal published this, but there are any number of local jurisdictions that are looking at the local currencies, and some of them are already issuing local currencies. And then all of the nations are going to have their own currencies, which are going to be minted out of the gold that belongs to them in the global debt facility. This has already been agreed, and the network of global corporate control is just hanging on by a thread, doing all kinds of shenanigans to try to prevent this from happening. One of the things that they just did this week was they shot a nuclear anti-ballistic missile off the coast of California. And this was just, it's really pathetic that they're sinking to this level of incompetence in an effort to prevent the world from moving forward. We're just no longer interested in paying country debt and interest on country debt. That's a scam. And the question that I'm asked very frequently is, if it's so clear that this is what the countries want to do, why aren't we just doing it? And the answer to that has to do with who is in authority, who has the authority. That's the people at the very top of the military that are working at the as lackeys, as puppets of the network of global corporate control. We know that's what they're doing. We know that's treason. Some of these individuals no longer they're bankrupt. The global debt facility has put liens on their assets, and that includes our top politicians. That includes Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And we haven't foreclosed on their homes. What we need to do is we need to come to an understanding. We need to have a kind of a truce so that there can be a changing of the guards peacefully. And where that stands is that I have been in contact with the Dutch embassy in Washington. There's a young woman who's been seeking asylum. She was a translator, an Afghani woman. She was a translator for the army, and she's now, her life is being threatened by a man who has killed a number of people that were working with the U.S. military. And the U.S. military has refused to give her asylum. And so she is now going to be seeking that from the Netherlands. And what happened when, when she contacted the Netherlands, that's when the people who had been refusing to give her asylum in the United States sent her a letter out of the clear blue sky after they hadn't worked on her recommendations. She got glowing recommendations from the people who she had been helping, but the military couldn't be bothered to stand up for her. And of course, the military is also leaving many of our veterans in a tough situation. Their suicide rate is much higher than that in the general population. With tomorrow being Veterans Day, I think it's pretty important for us to focus on exactly what kind of reputation the United States has because of the state capture and the way the network of global corporate control has been creating a shambles of the United States. And it's very clear that if we do not replace the Federal Reserve note with the monetary gold reserves that belong to the United States in the global debt facility, we're not, first of all, we're going to be in World War III. The United States is going to be surrendering unilaterally. And so when you call the soldiers to task who are reading about the actual situation, and they're also reading about this very accurate power transition model, which says that there is a coalition for the rule of law, which is much stronger than the network of global corporate control. And this network, which is bankrupt, is simply preventing us from moving on. Anyway, where we are is that the people that are working for the network of global corporate control have got to recognize that they have got to step aside. And if they don't, the consequences for them and for everyone are going to be very predictable and very dire. What happens with permanent gold backwardation? There's no more international trade. There's pestilence. There's mass starvation. And one of the conversations that I had just this past week is because of several of the things that are going on in the patriot community. They are running out of patience. They're just ready to just give up on a good outcome, and they're also being stimulated to do that. That's what that kind of an anti-ballistic missile is intended to do. It's intended to frighten people, to get them to forget that there is a positive outcome, and to just to have a stampede and to descend into chaos. And the point is, there's no reason to do that. And that's where we are right now. We're hanging by a thread in the balance. And one of the things that gives me serious pause was criticism that I received. People were saying that I was telling everybody that things were all hunky-dory, they were all good, and I was preventing people from doing what needs to be done. And I'm very sympathetic to that criticism. I had a very, very serious doubt about whether we were going to pull it off when I went up to the International Law Weekend. And people saw what I said at the conclusion of that meeting. I've been a member of the executive committee of the American branch of the International Law Association for many, many years. And what happened at that meeting, just before the meeting, was I summarized what some of the issues are in the legal profession. The fact that we do not have a constitution in effect, that the Article III courts of the federal judiciary are not, the judges have betrayed their oaths of office, and what the judges are doing is they're administrators, they're employees of the network of global corporate control. When somebody appears before them in court, they're not looked at as a human being, they're looked at as a trust that's got investments on the bond market on the basis of their birth certificate. The fact is that the title to houses and cars is not held by the people who have paid off the loans. It's held by the network of global corporate control. What the states have done ever since 1937 is they have just been issuing warranties of title. They haven't been issuing the real title. And I sent all of that documentation to the executive committee. And when I went to the meeting in New York, I had expected that I was going to have to defend the legal arguments. Not a single person was willing to discuss whether that was true or whether that was false. What they did at that meeting was they decided to incorporate themselves. They had been an association, and they were trying to shield themselves from liability. That's what they did. I was the sole person on the executive committee that said that I didn't think that that was an appropriate thing for us to do. What the association did was they changed their bylaws so the president could act by fiat, and the members of the executive committee would just be there as appendages with absolutely very little to say about anything. So if the legal profession is not willing to admit what the actual situation is, how are we going to transition if they're just adamant and in denial, and they're not even willing to address the issues on their merits? This is a very sorry state, and so I can point to the power transition model as much as I want, but if people are not able to act as sentient, that means somebody who's conscious, if they're not willing to act as sentient human beings, there's very little hope for us. So what I'm hoping is that that the people that are listening to this are going to make their voices known, that we have got to have a smooth transition, that there is absolutely no reason for us to sit back and let paper currency crash when we have all the gold that we need to prevent that from happening. And it's already been decided that it should happen. We'll have to see. What I'm going to be doing at the conclusion of this segment is I'm going to be posting some of the previous segments that we had in October. And you can see on the internet, there are a number of questions. People want to see actual proof. They don't just take my word for what I'm saying. And we're going to, this series has been going now for 6 months. You can look at the archives. You can see the previous documentation. And I think one of the most compelling proofs is the fact that the International Court of Justice was trying to erase the agreement at the conclusion of World War II. They were, and the fact is that this was reversed by the Board of Governors. So if you see that, then it's pretty clear. If there weren't any gold, then the International Court of Justice wouldn't have to bother to try to steal it. So this is for real, and the question is whether we're able to work together, whether we've got enough presence of mind to assure the people that have been working as agents for the network of global corporate control that it's worth their while to transition smoothly, that's really the only way for all of us. It's not going to be a simple thing because there are so many people who are out of it. They're just simply out of it. And one of the things that I posted this past week was some very compelling documentation showing the technology that's used to hypnotize people and prevent them from reasoning. But fortunately, a number of us are able to reason, and we're hoping that the ones of us that can reason will carry the day. And as I said, this power transition model, which is very accurate, is predicting that that's exactly what's going to happen. I was going to spend some time talking about the Koh-i-Noor diamond. That's another reason why I think it's pretty clear that we are in transition. The Koh-i-Noor diamond was India's diamond, and it was stolen by the network of global corporate control in 1849. And now India is suing the United Kingdom to get their diamond back. If they thought that the network of global corporate control was in control, they wouldn't have bothered. So this is another very clear sign that the network is not in control, that we, the Coalition for the Rule of Law, are the ones that are in control. And I was going to tell you a little bit about the history of the Koh-i-Noor diamond. I'll just run through this because we're running out of time. But the Koh-i-Noor diamond goes way back. It goes back to 5,000 years ago. And at that point, the name of the diamond was the Siamantaka diamond. Koh-i-Noor means mountain of light. Now, it's not clear whether the Siamantaka and the Koh-i-Noor are the same diamond, but if a diamond is that large, chances are we're talking about the same diamond. And so the Maharaja Ranjit Singh, up until 1304, the diamond was in the possession of the Rajas of Malwa. And back then, the diamond was called, as I said, the Siamantaka. And in 1304, the diamond belonged to the Emperor of Delhi, Alauddin Khilji. And then in 1339, the diamond went back to the city of Samarkand, where it stayed for almost 300 years. And in 1306, in a Hindi writing, there was a curse placed on men if they were to wear the diamond. He who owns this diamond will own the world, but will also know all its misfortunes. Only God or a woman can wear it with impunity. And then in 1526, the Mughal ruler Babur mentions the diamond in his writings. And then the diamond was given to him by the Sultan Ibrahim Lodi. And Lodi was the one who described the diamond's value as equal to a half a day of the entire world's production. And one of the descendants of Babur, who was named Aurangzeb, protected the diamond and passed it on to his heirs. And his grandson was, he was a bit of a rake. And what happened was Nadir Shah, who was a Persian general, went to India in 1739, and he was able to conquer the diamond, and it was surrendered. And Nadir Shah was the one who gave the diamond its current name, the Koh-i-Noor, meaning mountain of light. And the thing about Nadir Shah was he didn't live very long. So I'm being told that that's all the time that we have left. As I said, the British East India Company took the diamond, and now India wants it back. So I want to thank you for listening to this network of global corporate control, and hope that you'll stay tuned to see which way we go, whether we're able to stay with the Coalition for the Rule of Law, and whether we're going to go into another dark ages, because that's the alternative if we don't play it right. Thank you. See you next week.